Thanks for joining me. My name's Trevor Magnuson, and in this video we are going to be using this bit to join this bit to this bit. But first I'm going to need to remove this little section of bindings. And you know what we're going to use to do that, don't you?
The most useful saw in the world.
The neck tongue now fits inside the slot easily. It protrudes by 22 millimeters. I'm going to need to cut a slot in the heel a little bit more than 22 millimeters so that clamping can occur. And fortuitously, I'm going to have to cut right but not quite up to where the steel end bolt of our truss rod is. That is why having a custom truss rod length is kind of needed for my design. The other thing, of course, is that the lateral position of the slot that we cut in the heel is absolutely critical, so I need to fit the heel to the guitar like so and draw two little marks, and that's where we're going to be cutting the slot in between. We've got the bulk of the slot cut, and now we need to just go up to, but not quite up to, each line. I used a piece of MDF which served two purposes. It allowed the neck to butt up against the edge of the sled even though there was a nail sticking out of it, the nail that we used to position the fretboard. And also it acts as sacrificial piece to prevent tear out from the blade. But it's not super accurate, and the stop blocks that I put here engage with the MDF, not the neck itself. So I've got to be really careful just edging it over ever so slightly until we're there. Two factors prevent that scheme from working perfectly. The first is that my sled has a little bit of lateral wiggle room. And the second is that when you are using a blade to widen an existing slot, the work can push the top of the blade over a bit. So we're fitting in at the bottom and we're not fitting in at the top. I'm going to fix that with chisels because all I'll do is widen bits that I don't want widened if I persist over on the table saw. I feel a bit like a farmer. I've stuck the bolts in to engage with the nuts inside the neck tongue so that I can learn the amount of freedom up and down we have. So the uppermost extent is about 2 mils, 3, and the lowermost is 8 mils. So what I want to do is glue in that block so that it is in the middle of that travel. So that when the block is inside the neck, we can put it inside the body and get it exactly where we want it. It is fitting nicely. It's a tiny bit loose at the bottom, but that does not concern me. When you glue two surfaces together and press them in that way, that gives a very good join. When you slide them in edgewise, there is the risk of a glue-starved joint. So a little bit loose doesn't worry me too much. I will actually clamp it that way. I am leaving some bolts in the work so that if any glue gets into the threads, they won't prevent the bolts from engaging when we need them to.
Dun, dun, dun.
You would think, the way I go on and on about my notes, yeah, they're on my website, that I'd actually read them from time to time. But no, I've gone and jumped in and done a step out of order. What I should have been doing first was addressing the face of the heel so that the alignment and position and angle, etc., of the neck is just right. That's much more easy to do when it hasn't got a tongue glued in it. And the tongue itself, you can shave it and shim it and get all sorts of control and adjustments done. Much easier when it is a loose unit. As it is, this is the straightest neck that I have ever made. That piece of string is dead down the centre all the way, so we're very fortunate there. Doesn't quite go all of our way because the neck angle is a little bit too high. It needs to be rotated a bit lower. If we were to glue it up as it is at the moment, the bridge would be too short and the guitar would be not as responsive as we would like. So what I will do, instead of addressing that by sanding the heel, I will do that by sanding the face of the body. It'll be much easier. But gee, I really need to read my own notes. I will need to do just very minor sanding of this face because this is naked wood that's been cut by the bandsaw, if you remember, and it's going to need to make a smooth, tight hairline join in this angle here and in the face of the cutaway. Ho-hum. The first thing that you did not see me do was finish the neck fit up by sanding on the body. Sanding on the body is a valid part of neck fit ups, but it shouldn't have to do the heavy lifting as it did for me. The second thing you did not see me do was attaching the neck to the body using two furniture bolts and this wrench through the access port. The guitar is now strong enough to be strung up, but Nobody's going to buy that, nobody's going to believe it. So we're going to glue it, and those 2 bolts are just going to be for clamping. The third thing that you did see me do was cut the heel cap. It's only partially fitted. We'll do the rest by hand after we glue it on, which we're not ready to do yet. So we'll put that aside. Incidentally, it turns out that our heel stack was just a whisker too short. I like to have it coming up to the line formed by the bindings. Then we can cut it at a slant and have a heel cap that is even thickness but tilted down. That has its own complications, and I have some little slanted pieces of wood that I temporarily bolt to the heel stack after it's been cut at an angle, so that we can do various operations that are going to come later on. Because we are going to have a heel cap that is not even in thickness, it's flat on the bottom and curved on the top, that means we can have a flat spot here, and that's going to make some of those steps easy. We aren't going to need those trapezoidal blocks. Getting the height sliding up those slots to where we want it. Then I'm tightening them up. Nice and evenly. Getting lots of squeeze out, that's good, but we will absolutely need to clean that away, especially on the inside corner. That's come together nicely. Just pulled out that index pin so that we can sand this transition perfectly flat. It's pretty good, don't worry. We'll need to put it back in later. The final step is to level this transition perfectly flat and smooth. You may recall we left the vertical strip a little bit proud, deliberately. There are a few other things that need to be sanded that weren't quite so deliberate. As you may have noticed, I had to take a little bit more off here than first planned. Turns out the lateral position of the slot I carved in the neck wasn't quite spot on. That means that the neck is now a little bit thinner than it was a while back. Not really a problem, because I designed my necks to be 55 mils at the body fret. Most guitars are 54. This guitar is now a little over 54. That also involves the risk of moving the centre line of the bridge laterally, off centre, and it has been moved by about 1 millimetre, possibly even less. I had to rework the side lines of the fretboard, and I did so symmetrically because I didn't want you to notice the problem with the 2 marker dots there. That meant that I had to replace one of the index pins. So all in all, a pretty satisfactory result. Join me next time when we're going to be making the bridge, but we're not going to be attaching it. Cheers.